headed up that group since 2003. Spoke to Goldman Sachs last year at an event organised by Goldman Sachs, and he talked about New World Order 2.0. Remember this?
We need to think about order very differently in the 21st century. And for the last few hundred years, order was premised on a very simple idea. Big idea, and an innovation when it came up in the 17th century. But it's the idea that this is a world of nation states, and that the organizing principle, the ordering principle will be sovereignty. And essentially, states will not use force to change borders of other states, and states will respect the borders of others, not just physically, but they'll respect it in a larger sense. They won't be interfering. They'll essentially leave what happens within other states to that country alone. It's kind of live and let live, hands off reality. And that was a big idea when it came around in the mid-17th century. It was obviously violated over the next 300 plus years, but it's still a good idea. Saddam Hussein violated it when he went into Kuwait. It was a costly decision. And again, Russia violated it more recently. We don't want to have a world where this is violated regularly.
Still a good idea, thank God. Countries live and let live, respect the sovereignty of other countries, don't tell them what to do, and we don't want a world where sovereignty is violated regularly, said Richard Haas. But
my argument in the book is that's all good, it's still necessary, but it's no longer sufficient. That as you live in a world of globalization, to make a long story short, nothing stays local for long. If you have computer hackers on your territory, they can cause mischief or worse all over the world. If you have a poultry farm that has unsanitary conditions, certain types of diseases can break out, human transmission, it can cause a global pandemic. If you're India and you decide that your economy forces you to generate a lot more electricity, and the easiest way to do it is through coal, this will have climate change consequences for everyone else in the world, in addition to whatever environmental consequences it may have for you. As we learned on 9/11, a few blocks from here, if a government allows, or one way or another, through choice or weakness, terrorists to operate out of its territory, those terrorists can cause havoc halfway around the world. As we saw in Syria, if you have massive flows of refugees, it can destabilize other parts of the world, as we're now seeing in Europe. So my argument is simply, while we need to respect sovereignty and not, again, bring about a world where invasion is commonplace, we also now need to build on it. And my idea is that sovereign entities need to have the obligation to make sure that nothing is allowed to go on within their territorial limits that has adverse consequences for anybody else.
How do you do that, though? How do you say, on the one hand, you respect the sovereign integrity of a nation, but then say, in the next breath, nations cannot do things within their own borders, as it might have a negative effect on climate, or the economy, or on security, or whatever? So how do you respect their sovereignty, and then say to India, for example, you've got to stop mining coal and burning coal to satisfy your electricity needs without invading them? This is where we get into one world government, which the European Union is a major part of.
Just for anybody else. In return, nothing will go on in anyone else's territorial limits that would have adverse consequences for us. And what we want to do is set up these rules through consultations and negotiations. Here's what every sovereign entity, including the United States, is obligated to do. We'd agree to the set of behaviors and rules or norms, and then we'd also agree, how do we incentivize countries to live up to it? How do we give them capacity, if they lack it, to live up to it? How do we penalize or deal with those who violate it? And I call this World Order 2.0, but I think this is an operating system for a world in which globalization, not just great power conflict, is the principal dynamic. It's not wrong, it's just no longer adequate.
The guy's a madman. Richard Haas. He's a Zionist, you won't be surprised to hear. He's a madman. He's talking about, and of course this is a hugely influential man in a hugely influential think tank, which itself is hugely important in the Round Table Secret Society. These are the people. These are the button men for the Rothschild Rockefeller crime dynasty. These are the button men. These are the guys who deliver to politicians in DC and around the world what it is that's going to happen. And this is it. World Order 2.0. Pretend to respect the territorial sovereignty of a nation, but say that every nation must sign up to something. To what exactly? A set of rules and regulations, which include clauses and paragraphs and subsections which talk about punishments for countries that don't do what it is they are told by the group. This is the one world government. The Rothschild Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, it staggers me that most French people don't know that this guy is a Rothschild employee and he's now heading up the French government. He's been calling for a European Union army, as has Angela Merkel, the never-ending Chancellor of Germany. Long-time listeners to this programme and to my other programmes will know that I've been interviewing men and women for years who predicted that such an army would be created. Again, a massive chip away at the territorial sovereignty, the integrity of that sovereignty of countries around Europe. That European Union army then could be used to do the dirty work of the Rothschild Zionist cabal in invading countries anywhere around the world or anywhere within proximity, think Middle East again, or the European Union army could be used to quell any rebellion against the fascist superstate from within it, from the people, as people begin to wake up to what it is doing to them and what it will do to them. This is not about immigration. You know, the whoring media never misses an opportunity to tell you that, the European Union, people voted against it because of immigration. It's not to say that in many deprived areas of the country, where a migrant workforce prepared to work for less and for worse conditions had an impact on the residents of those more deprived areas, I'm sure those more deprived people did go to the ballot box 2 years ago thinking I'm fed up of open border immigration. But that's what they want you to think about. It's not about that. For people in the know, it is a terrifying spectre what the European Union is, what it represents, and where it ultimately leads. And I've never been stupid. Big-mouthed, opinionated, certainly. Stupid, no. I do not put my faith in multi-millionaire free market capitalists like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson either. They're not the answer. You know? Again, the hidden hand, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't give a damn whether Theresa May survives the night or survives the next few days or the next few months. It doesn't matter. So long as you put your faith in the left or the right, it will win. The Labour Party almost universally wants to destroy the result of the referendum and keep the United Kingdom in the cartel one way or another. Jeremy Corbyn is a wretched, elbow patch wearing, tweed jacket, fucking hawking coward who spent all of his life on the back benches talking about what Tony Benn talked about a bit earlier on. How the European Union means ultimately deprivation, poverty, squalor and misery for hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. What you've seen in southern Europe, in Italy, in Portugal, in Spain and in Greece, it'll be 1,000 times worse in the next 10, 15, 20 years as these guys progress this even further and take away more and more and more of what's rightfully yours, your personal sovereignty, your right to your personal space, to your thoughts, to your ideas, your right to live, your right to eat, your right to have a roof over your head, your right to have electricity. That's where it's going. And people don't know about it. And this whole debate has been reduced to screaming matches from galactic